Good evening. Our special conversation about the elections continues. What's in it for young people? I'm joined by Tebogo Suping, a youth activist and Activate Change driver. Thamsanqa Masingi, also an Activate Change driver, and also the policy analyst, Dr. Mathebula, and Dr. Ayodele Odusola is the resident representative of the United Nations Development Programme. Good evening. Thank you all for coming in tonight. I really do appreciate it. Tebogo, let me start with you. Most politicians are kind of my age, by which I mean they're old.
Yes.
Why should young people vote?
Because new faces are coming to play, and they deserve a chance. We've been chanting for the advocacy of young people to be given an opportunity on such levels and structures, to be able to be the ones to respond meaningfully to the issues that young people are facing. And also, I just want to emphasize to young people that not voting doesn't mean someone's not going to be elected. Not voting means nothing is going to change. And so if you don't utilize this opportunity, you're going to have to wait another 5 years for having no responses to the issues that you are facing. And we need to reiterate that message, because somebody is going to get up on the first and going to show up at the polls and select somebody that you're going to have to deal with.
I mean, Thamsanqa, in other democracies, we've seen, for example, during the Brexit vote in the UK, older people voted, they wanted Brexit. Younger people didn't want Brexit, but they didn't vote. And they're the ones who have to live with the consequences. So you're going to live with the consequences, not, you know, me and my grey hair.
Yeah, that is true. And that is the unfortunate part of a democracy, is that whether or not you participate, the outcome still continues. We will have a new council in place, and whether the council speaks to your needs or not depends on whether you participate in this process, right? If we look at council in itself, it consists of 50% what candidates and 50% PR. That PR is also important in case of getting your voice heard in council, so it's reflected in your municipality. So even if your political party does not essentially win the municipality, the voice and the needs that you represent, or that you have, might be represented by the party that you believe in. So it's quite essentially important to go out there on the first and participate in these elections, right? Yes, not voting is making a statement. However, it does put us in a position where, for the past 5 years, we've seen things not working. We've seen things not happen. The pandemic has exposed that. And if we don't step up in these elections, we might see more of the same. So it's our time to say, you know what, it's time for things to change. Let us step up and let us participate in these processes and beyond election, not just on the 1st of November, but what happens after the 1st of November is also quite essential.
Dr. Mathebula, I mean, in many places, not just South Africa, we talk about why don't young people vote? We ask ourselves this question all the time. But the same thing happens in other countries. The older you are, the more likely you are to vote.
Yes, it's because when you're older, you have insurable interests in the politics of your land. And there is this misconception that young people don't have an insurable interest in voting, and that is wrong. Because if you're young and you don't influence the politics when you're young, by the time you get old, it will be too late. So the dream that was delivered in this country over and above the Constitution in 1994 by Mandela and his cohort is also the dream of the franchise. And if young people are not going to use that dream as one of the rare capitals that they command in society to determine where society goes, that's a serious social capital they have with that X. So if they don't use it tomorrow, they are not investing the capital that they have into their future. So they should go and vote, and I think that's what I hear the young people here saying, and I agree with them. I mean, at their age, I would have been in another context where I fought for this, and I don't understand why they can't use what has been delivered to them to change their circumstances and talk to their future with their vote.
Tebogo, there's a really interesting question about, is it because our politicians are too old? And on one level, I think that might be true. But, I mean, Bernie Sanders in the US has a lot of young people supporting. I think a lot of young people would support Winnie Madikizela-Mandela if she was still with us, and certainly support the image of her, the symbol, everything that she symbolizes. So is it about the age of the politician, or is it about the youthfulness of their ideas?
It's the disconnect between old people and the needs of young people. It's the disconnect between not keeping up with the times of what is really required. It is not politics, essentially, that's required to shift South Africa forward. It's the responses to the socio-economic challenges that people are facing at a local level. I mean, what these elections essentially have exposed, if you listen to what's happening in the radio, people are saying, I don't have water. I can't relate to what's happening right now. I don't have electricity. I am still going to a school that does not have the essentials that are required. I feel disenfranchised. I don't understand what this means. And we're not getting politicians who are utilizing that to create those conversations. And having those conversations now in the elections is a little bit too late. And so what we want to encourage to the oldies is to say, you do know what you need to be doing. What is missing is essentially the accountability, because it is in the IDP that you need to understand what it is that you need to be delivering on. What more should we require? But the president also needs to be making a much harsher stance, is not accepting 27 out of 257 municipalities to not receive a clean audit and be okay with that. And essentially, that is what is really missing. Age shouldn't be a factor that determines whether you deliver or not. It is whether or not you are sitting in a public representative position, understanding that you are not there for your personal gain.
Thamsanqa, how do you encourage then young people to vote? I mean, everything that you say I'm not going to disagree with. I would also argue that perhaps people of my generation, Dr. Mathebula, you can argue with me if you like, have actually left South Africa worse off than when I arrived in it in a strange way. I mean, look, I was born during apartheid, but what I mean is that during my life, South Africa got better. I don't know if it's doing that for young people. So how, in that situation, does your organization encourage people to vote?
Most recently, what we've done is that we've got other young people to facilitate civic education workshops in their respective communities. These are people who have been through our programs, who have learned about local government, who understand the importance of local government, and they have peer-to-peer dialogues regarding what needs to happen in local government and, you know, how to participate in these processes. The key challenge has been the resistance from certain municipalities to get people to participate in various processes. So there's a lot of gatekeeping there. So, and there's a lot of information hoarding. So a lot of people don't know what an IDP is, an integrated development plan. A lot of people don't know that you are supposed to participate in these meetings. I'm from Mogale City, right? Before 2016, there used to be huge placards that spoke to IDP meetings will be taking place in 2 weeks. Post the 2016 local government elections, I haven't seen those placards whenever there's an IDP meeting. So it's, you know, having those programs and initiatives in communities, peer-to-peer, when young people discuss what needs to be happening in local government, and then, you know, having programs or initiatives taking it further from there. Engage with your IDP. What does your IDP say? Engage with your local municipality as well. You know, try to engage your councillor. Who is your councillor? Find out who that person is. What are they doing in your community? How can you participate in various programs? If there's a ward committee that you can join, how do you go about joining it and so forth?
I mean, there's a lot in what you say there. I'm very interested in one thing, Thamsanqa, that you said about how if you want to encourage people to vote, get people who are like the people you want to vote to get to vote. Ambassador Nadas Bekele Thomas, I mean, you've been around the world. You've been to many places in Africa. Does that hold true wherever you are? If you're in Benin and you want to encourage people who speak a certain language to vote, speak to the people who speak that language, get them to encourage people like them?
Yeah, I think wherever you are, you know, wherever I am and wherever I have been, you know, voter education and encouraging citizens to vote is very critical and very important. Because, you know, the destiny of a country does not belong to the few politicians, but to the entire citizens. As citizens have the right, and it's in their constitutional right to vote. They have to be part and parcel of the decision making. It's not only a political right, it's also socio-economic right. And therefore, it's very critical for any development process that, you know, participation by all becomes, you know, compulsory. In my own conviction, wherever I go, I say that, you know, each and every citizen should mandatorily should be mandated to vote, and it should be mandatory. It should be imperative, and I think that would make the whole participatory governance, the whole participatory development to be alive.
Dr. Lucky Mathebula, it is clear that if there was a party that won the votes of young people, it would probably be in power today. You know, if you look at the numbers, it seems obvious. There's only one party that goes for young people, although its leader is over 40. I don't think he'll forgive me for saying that. So why aren't political parties cracking this? I mean, there's a massive gap in our politics here. That seems so obvious. You crack this market, you win.
Yes, the South African youth, it's a complex. It's a very complex youth. And I think political parties, barring the one that we are talking about, are not brave enough to listen to the youth and take what the youth are taking. And because of that, they are marginalizing the voice of the youth in their political parties. And because of that, we are losing an ability to hear what the future is thinking today. You know, South Africa needs to have an attitude that Nelson Mandela actually gave us. Nelson Mandela was a thinker that operated on a beyond incumbency attitude. You know, when he was arrested, he was 49, he compromised his incumbent privilege and came to live it 27 years later. When he became president and he negotiated the constitution, he took the same beyond incumbency attitude and negotiated a constitution that today we realize that, wow, this old man and his cohort actually thought about what they were doing. Because it is this constitution that has practically saved us from the going souther than the south we are probably in. So we need leaders today that are going to have a beyond incumbency attitude. They must forget about who they are now and think about who is coming after them. And the youth are the only people to look at when you want to do that.
Very interesting. We're going to continue this conversation. Tebogo Suping, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thamsanqa Masingi, excuse me, I really appreciate the time. We'll continue the conversation in a moment with Dr. Lucky Mathebula. We'll speak to Dr. Ayodele Odusola, and we will speak to Ambassador Nados Bekele Thomas from the United Nations. Do stay with us.